you can give Teddy Roosevelt a lot of you could credit him with a lot of accomplishments. But now, a lot of people credit him with that because the British couldn't do it either. And also, he did not create the first national park, however. That was Yellowstone, happening in the 1880s before he became. But he was an advocate. He was a big advocate of those things, absolutely. And when he was the governor of New York State, before he was the vice president and the president, he set aside the Adirondack region as a state park. And that was one of the earliest such accomplishments. We are absolutely going to where the Twin Towers stood. People put them up there spontaneously right after 9/11, and it has remained ever since. We've turned onto Greenwich Avenue. We're going to go right through Greenwich Village on Greenwich Avenue, where we are now. This is a fabulous street, Fiddlesticks Pub and Grill. This is all very British in here. That it's a hangout for British nationals that work in New York City. We're going to take to 8th Street down here as well. There is a large population of Aussies in New York, and and I can tell you exactly where they are. They're in an area called Nolita, which is north of Little Italy. There's a huge community down there. There's a whole street of Australian bars and restaurants. It's a little section, but I say it's huge, but it's a good representation. I can tell you one thing. Back in the 80s, I went to a party at a theater, which was a party for Australian filmmakers, and there were like over 200 of them that turned up within like half an hour, all wearing black, all from Australia. It was fascinating. Many had worked with the people who did the Road Warrior movies, and oh my God, absolutely. We have a place called Australian Coffee in the. Now you're in the trendiest, most très chic part of New York City. And look right down this street to the right, and you can see where they did the movie Ghost. That second block down there. Demi Moore, Patrick Swayze, Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi grew up in Chelsea, by the way. Yep, and she got her Academy Award for that. And what do you have here in Soho more than anything else and more than anywhere else? You see where it says Foot Locker right here? Look at that building. That's a cast iron building. See the stubby columns and the big rectangular windows? That tells you it's cast iron. Cast iron was the building material of choice for large buildings prior to steel. Now, steel is perfected as a building material in the 1880s. Before that, our big buildings were built with cast iron. And before cast iron, stone. But with a stone building, the walls hold up the building. Interior and the sides will be brick, but the inside will be a wooden interior. Now we're taking a left turn, ladies and gentlemen, into Chinatown. This is all Chinatown up in here. All of it. See the McDonald's and Chinese coming up? Canal Street is the street we're turning onto. This is, in population, this is the largest Chinatown in the Western Hemisphere. In the 1980 census, 30 years ago, we outdid San Francisco. Now, sometimes in these restaurants, you'll see these things hanging in the windows. You don't see it there, but you'll probably see it a little bit later, right in that window there, on those shelves, on that rack, if you will. Those are known as UBOs, the things hanging in the windows, unidentified barbecued objects. And I hope to be able to see some to point them out to you. You see all the merchandise, the handbags, the purses, the shirts, the souvenirs, the sunglasses, etc. This is a great area for haggling with the merchants and getting the price lowered. You can't do that in other parts of New York, but here in Chinatown, it's expected. It's expected. Now, that restaurant usually has them right in the window as well, but it's a little early still in the day. Looking to the left, folks, looking to the left, we have Mulberry Street, and that gives us Little Italy. Right up here is Little Italy. Now, Little Italy used to be a much larger years ago, And look at the ramp. You see the ramp going up? The movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, they end right up there when Matthew McConaughey gets off the motorcycle and Kate Hudson is in the taxi. Right up in there. The beautiful entrance designed by Carrere and Hastings, who gave us the New York Public Library. Chinatown, all around us. Here comes some UBOs right here. See them in the window? To the right. Do you know that this is not the only Chinatown in New York City? We have 2 in Brooklyn and 2 in Queens, 5 Chinatowns. Here to the left, the statue of Confucius, through those trees. Famous for his quotes, the Chinese philosopher Confucius. And do you know, 1913, it opened up, and it stood as the world's tallest building until 1929. We'll take this left turn. Isn't that gorgeous? That's the headquarters of the Woolworth Corporation. Frank W. Woolworth built it. Look at the terracotta on the outside, that ornamental ceramic coming off the sides. Isn't that gorgeous? And there's a look at the municipal building. See it with the wedding cake top and civic fame all the way up at the top of it. And the U.S. Courthouse with the pyramidal top of the U.S. Courthouse just beyond it. And for those of you that can see that building right over there, that is the Park Row building from 1899. And up until 1908, it was the tallest building in the world. Do you know we had the tallest building in the world in New York City from the 1890s all the way up to the 1970s. We're now on Broadway. Looking down Broadway, this is the Canyon of Heroes, where we do the ticker tape parades. And this church coming up is the oldest church in Manhattan. Not in New York City, but in Manhattan. St. Paul's Chapel. One of the most significant, historically significant churches in the United States. George Washington worshipped in here for a year and a half when he was in New York as our first president. We were the first capital after the Constitution was signed, was ratified. This church is based on St. Martin's in the Fields in London. This church, on 9/11, not a single window broke in this church. 90% of the windows were blown out by the collapsing towers. Ground Zero is right behind the church. Here it comes. Right there. There's Ground Zero. See the construction? Now, do you know, ladies and gentlemen, this was the resting station for the recovery workers. They suspended the services for 8 months while the site was being cleaned up. This is where the recovery workers could go. There's now a memorial inside honoring them. And the inside of the church, by the way, was designed by Pierre L'Enfant, who went on to be one of the designers of Washington, D.C. The church itself is by Thomas McBean. Very famous church. And here's another little tidbit. It hasn't closed for a single day since it opened in 1766. It is the longest continuously operating building in New York State. Below street level, in vaults half a football field, is 1/3 of the world's gold bullion. Look, see that gigantic structure back there? That's it. 1/3 of the world's gold bullion, not American gold, European gold, brought here during and after World War II to keep it out of the hands of the Nazis. And they left it here after the war. We let them store it there for free. You can tour those vaults. I've done it twice. One street lends its name to this whole area. Wall Street. If you say you work down on Wall Street, it means you work in the financial industry downtown. But the street itself is coming up now on the left. And this church is Trinity Church. It's in the movie National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. The churchyard is one of the most famous in the country. Alexander Hamilton, among many others, is buried here. Hamilton, of course, the first Secretary of the Treasury, the financial genius of the Founding Fathers. Hamilton organized the first government under the George Washington administration. He organized the Constitutional Convention, which led to the Constitution. He founded the Bank of New York. He founded the New York Post. He founded the Coast Guard. Hamilton was an amazing person. So amazing, we honor him because his picture is the one on the $10 bill. And his grave I will point out. But first, ladies and gentlemen, look at Wall Street. Right here. And notice you gets going nice and slow for us. Here's Wall Street right here. That's it. Look how straight it is. Look how straight it is.
For such a crooked street.
That grave back there, halfway back on the side with the obelisk, that elongated pyramid, that's Hamilton's grave. The most famous grave in New York City, in my opinion. Definitely the most famous in Manhattan. He was killed in a duel. So they're rebuilding. This was all one big bathtub after they cleaned it all out. Now you see the trees? The trees were just planted about a month ago. They will be in between the two reflecting pools. And here's one of them right here. You see where the orange fence is there? And right there, just immediately right there, is where the North Tower stood. And then over that way where the South Tower stood. And this building here will replace both of them. And when he winds up in the area where Troy, New York is now located, there's no more tide and just a river that's coming at you and not navigable with the half moon, so he turns around and comes back. He claims all of this for the Dutch, and its original name is New Netherlands, and down here it's New Amsterdam, but they don't settle until 13 years later. Look at this building here to our left. That is one of the air vents for the Holland Tunnel, the world's first vehicular traffic tunnel underwater, 1927, named for one of the engineers who designed the fans that are inside there. Bees, or I guess she's hooking the seat there. Final fateful voyage. This pier is very famous. It had a building on it at one time. And they filmed Will Smith out there broadcasting to the world in the movie I Am Legend. Sorry that this garbage truck is in our way here. It's tough in New York to get a good view of things. That pier there. Now you can see another old remains or remnant of a... Now, if you look out in front of us, you can see the aircraft carrier USS Intrepid. On the deck